Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening to those who are now tuning in. Good evening to those who are now tuning in. This is Dr. Matthews-Bey coming straight out of Guyana from the Dr. Matthews-Bey Show, Voice of the Nation, and on the online radio, which is now live streaming, the GMS Live Radio Guyana. So, to those who are now tuning in, to those who are now getting that notification, there is a lot of interference that is going on from this de facto administration on the Facebook, YouTube, and I think Instagram also too, but not Instagram really, YouTube. They are trying to create a more stricter they're trying to create a more stricter community of broadcasting on social media through through YouTube, but they're having problems. And they're also having problems with Facebook because what is happening with Facebook, for you to get through to us on Facebook, it's something that you have to do daily. It's not like the de facto administration does it and Facebook do it every night for them. It's an every night you have to register a complaint. And Facebook has a system that when you register the complaint, they take a look at it. Not the same time. The problem is with them is that Facebook doesn't look at the system at night. It looks at it in the daytime. And depends on what you're complaining on, right? They might act or might not act on it. Like for instance, when I was being complained on Facebook by a particular host to a particular show like mine, very much surprising that he did that. Facebook levied on me because it was an every night report and I was using the same background. What I was made to understand that he complained of a copyright infringement on the background that I was using. Then there was a young lady who used the same background who would happen to be in his political arena, the same background, and nothing wasn't being done. So it's just amazing how the fight, the information warfare that is now out there, it's amazing to see how it affects, and people doesn't want you to know the truth. So I take this opportunity this evening just to let you know who and what am I. It was a question that was asked deep in my mind after start getting certain certain chronologies that I would have been constantly coming into contact with. And before I start, completely before I start what I'm about to do tonight, I would my prayer or my inner being, that living soul, would very much appreciate if you try with an intent to comprehend what I'm saying. and not only apply it to your life, but ask the same questions that I was asking. And I'm going to tell you why I came up with the questions: who or what am I? That's the basic reason for the show tonight. So, this is Dr. Gavin Matthews Bay. Bay is a title that I adopt that belongs to my foreparents on this amexium, which is America, that I'm living on, that identifies me as an Aboriginal. Aboriginal means abstract from the Father, an original being, as indigenous to the land. These are the identifications of us who I would call people of melanin. So, good night and good evening to you, to those who are now joining from whichever part of the world. Welcome from Guyana to the Americas, to the Amexium, and around the continents. I thank you for tuning in at this time, and I would be very much happy if you, as you listen, please listen with an open mind, with the intent to edify and not to distract, with the intent to liberate and not to take away. Good evening to all those who are now saying good evening to me, and my prayer is that you continue to support the Matthews Bay show so we can gain strength as a people and we can rise as a nation with the intent to free a people that are still enslaved. I do this with a heart to try and try and try all the time until when it's right. My parents, after primary school, would have constantly given me one thing over and over again: books. I can I can't vaguely, but I can remember every time this comes around my birthday, which is always the day before Christmas. So I was looking for three gifts: birthday, Christmas, and New Year's gift. And I always get one thing. I always get a book. And I was always told to read constantly. And because of vexation, I started reading because I figured out if this is the only thing they want me to do and they ain't give me, well, I gonna read then. And then I started reading. I started comprehending. And I will tell every parent now that is listening and also paying very keen attention to the show: give your child a book. Give a child a book. It's like when you put a sweet the first time on the tongue of a baby's on the baby's tongue, and the taste bud wakes up and it explodes. That child wants more. This is what happens when you give a book to a child. You allow that child to comprehend, wake up their ideas, especially if they're like me, melanin like me. You wake up their ideas. You trigger, sorry, the motive operandi. And that's what makes them who they are during this period of time. When I got to a stage where I could try to comprehend what's going on, I was trying to understand why did we have two world wars. Never could gather it. Never could grasp and grip the reason why. And then I can remember leaving the shores of Guyana to go live in the US. And when you meet there, the US was then being painted as the land of the brave and the strong, and a place where you can live out your dreams. They call it the American dream. Yes, to those who are looking, I lived in the United States with my parents. I lived on those who are living in the New York area and are looking at the show will know that on St. Mark's Avenue you had a public school. And in those days, I know it, public schools had numbers. Public School 289. I went to that public school. That's in Brooklyn. My thing is that when I started reading the US, the history of the US, I always wondered why they would bomb two countries. And to this day, it is the only country that had dropped two nuclear bombs. Or they call it atom and hydrogen, if I'm correct, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then, when reading the information properly, it was two countries that would have collaborated to do that. That was England and the US. But I really wanted to understand why they had the First World War, much less the second. Then, as I started this hypothetical journey. To those who know what hypothesis means, I constantly search for the truth, trying to make it gain weight, make it look original. And I run into a whole lot of things. Got me confused as a young man. You know, when you search for information, it start coming to sometimes the way and manner in which it's coming to you, it gets you confused because you don't know what to believe. You don't know what to treat as evidence or as original, and you don't know what to treat as fake because there's so much information out there. So much. And I started studying Black history. My mom gave me a book. And when I any child who reads that book would never trust a Caucasian. Never. At least I do. I don't. I mean, we can be friends, but we're trusting you as a Caucasian is concerned. My mom gave me a book, and it was the entitlement to the book is How to Kill a Black Man. It's not how to physically wound him, like you're in a fight and you want to wound him with an instrument or an object. It is how to physically tear apart his life from cradle to the grave. And when it's finished, before he dies, he would never have an identification or he would never have a title. He would never have nothing at all. Fast forward to today. I never had a complete understanding why they had all of these things, the World War and all. But fast forward to today. Working as a presidential guard, I joined the Guyana Police Force in 1995. And I I was seconded to the Presidential Guard. Then Mr. J. Gunn, when I was transferred to the Presidential Guard, I didn't had much thoughts of who Mr. J. Gunn was, then the President of Guyana. But he would have subsequently died after. He had a huge state funeral. I was one of his mourning parties. One of the military officers with the weapon turned it upside down and being at his casket whilst people come and view him. And I saw Guyanese from all walks of life, all walks. Every single day, the viewing of that body had lines stretching from the corners of middle streets, lines of people from middle streets into main streets into State House, and lines long from Lamaha streets. But I can only tell you what I was seeing, and I always wonder why. And I started reading some books and certain books of Chetty. Then up come Mrs. Jagan, and then she didn't last long. Then Mr. Jack Dio, in all his charisma, and I worked with Mr. Jack Dio and Samuel Hines as one of their personal bodyguards. And my my mind began to wander and began to awaken when things started happening in Guyana. Every day you turn on the television, every day you come to work, there were gunplays, policemen being killed. Uh, Drug lords have this infighting, then politics and politics and narcotics and all these things becoming involved, and that's how I see it. I don't care about anybody else. Before I go on, may I apologize, Islam, to you, my Moorish brothers and sisters, you Moors who normally join in to listen to Dr. Matthews-Bey. Islam to you this evening. My apologies. Islam again, I self-law, a master to those who are looking. That's what Islam means. Love, peace, and friendship to you all who are listening. What happened then? My mind began to awake because I'm saying to myself, as president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and in charge of the police force, you have all right to make all these activities cease because it beginning to take a toll on the nation, especially the nation's young men, young Aboriginal melanin men. Because no young man that I've seen, that I've known that in during that time who would have died have ever met 25 or have ever met the age of 21. They're always dying younger. A Saturday evening, I left my workplace. I think I was working with Prime Minister then, Samuel Archibald Hines, and I went home after doing a night shift. Sunday morning, as I get up to prepare to go to church, I always like looking at the BBC News, British Broadcasting Corporation, and sudden report about Guyana: 5 young men taken out of a car and shot executional style on Mandela's and Plaza Bridge. British Broadcasting Corporation brought this thing over, Sunday morning. I was pressing my shirt to go to church and I left stock at it. I said, well, if something have met thus far on the BBC News, it's really sending shock waves. So I went to church thinking of the position in which I am and asking myself if it is unique enough for me to stay in the Presidential Guard or to leave the job. At that time, you had this guy, Roger Shahid Khan, tearing through Guyana, ripping Guyana up. And it seems to be having no ending because the head of state then, who was Jack Dio, ain't doing nothing about it. The following week, they had a press conference, and one of the reporters would have asked Dr. Luncheon, who would have had a weekly press conference, then head of the presidential secretariat, about the military knowledge of the actions of Roger Khan. Never forget it. Mr. Luncheon said, Roger who? Roger Khan? I don't know of such a person. Just don't know what you're talking about. Right there and then I realized that staying here as a presidential guard is not a place for me. This is no place for me. Because why I'm saying so, I realize that politics is not a place for me to be working around. It's dangerous. People can die. And my training would have told me that. It's not all, it's what type of politics. Then I decided to ask for a transfer, and months would have passed and not getting it. So I decided to just leave the job, stay home. I would have already given the Guyana Police Force what? Roughly 15 years of service. And I told myself this, that I was never, ever, ever going to join any military organization ever again. I say this to say this. Who or what am I? After leaving the Presidential Guard, which is the Guyana Police Force, I started working at Beaner's Footwear as a security guard. And I started reading books on Marcus Garvey. I started reading books on Malcolm X. I started reading books on Mr. Ivan van Sertima. And not many books on him. I just read what you call, it was a lecture passage that he would have lectured to one of those universities, a university, I think it was UE, if I'm completely correct, or I may be incorrect, University of West Indies. But at that time, I didn't know he was Guyanese. And working there would have given me an advantage to see the world, because I had enough time to just be still at one place and to think without being distracted. Then I realized that this world is not what you think it is. Who am I? Am I a black man? Is it black was created by a system to me to identify myself as a black man? What am I? Am I in slavery? Am I a slave? Am I in bondage? Bondage? Am I being oppressed? Who really can I identify myself to? Must I go back to church? Must I lean onto the pastor who I think somehow or the other doesn't make sense when he's preaching? Who can I identify myself to? Who can I turn to give me such reasoning? Because everything seems to be going overboard. Because I keep asking myself, I am living, but what kind of system am I living in? Do I have any freedom? And when I think about freedom, I think about Mark Benchcop, who was imprisoned for 5 years without any judicial establishment of the crime that he did, the claim that he commit, for 5 years just for the freedom of speech. Who am I? And what am I? Am I really a Guyanese? Does the will of Guyanese really exist when we have the Caribbean community forming a Hodgson Accord to get Mrs. Jagan out of Parliament, out of government as president? She had to resign. Who can I identify myself to share these concerns as Guyanese? Must I be afraid? Or what am I really? Because then you had a guy in this country, came to this country, spent about 3 months, by a guy by the name of Leslie Prince. It's Leslie Prince? Yes, Leslie Prince. Spent about 3 months in Guyana. Stayed at the Pegasus Hotel. He had a big rally at the Square Revolution talking about bringing soldiers and military equipment to overthrow the government. Then Bar Jagdio's government. I can remember being on duty that I was present that night when he had that rally in the Square Revolution. When he talked about overthrowing the government, I'm like saying, but Mr. Luncheon is right upstairs and he ain't saying nothing about it. And you had policemen barricading that what you call it, that rally that night. And Leslie Prince's photograph was in every police station to be arrested. Every police station, and the guy stay in a Pegasus where the police could go and get him at any time. I looked at these things and I wonder, who or what am I? Then I started reading clips that was sent to me to find out who am I. Then I started trying to understand, where am I? Not who am I or what am I? Where really am I? I'm living in a system of lies. And each time the lie has been found out, there's more lies to keep covering the lie up. I found out about the Bronx. The Bronx is like a project What's the problem with Bronx and the project? It is because you put people to live in a box and you create a system in that box, and they take that system that they have lived in that box, that they've reared their children and their children in it, and send it out as a culture. So that culture would have been preached and taught to every person around the world that came out of that box. You call it the projects, American history. And I wonder why or how does it affect me here in Guyana? How does it really come about to affect Guyanese, especially melanated Guyanese like me or Aboriginals? Then I get to realize it's about the system. Can't I really come out of the system? Searching for ideas. Can't I just wake up tomorrow morning and say, well, look, I'm no longer part of the system? I'm afraid to say so because I'm afraid I might be arrested just trying to come out of the system. But then I started researching once again. Who and what am I? Because every time I near draw to a conclusion, it falls overboard because there's no reason why this would have happened. Then I brought up with the prison industrial complex. You ever heard the story cradle to the grave? That's what it means. Teach your child in such a way in school, which is a prison, that that child would have grown up to become a prisoner of the prison. The teacher is the wardens. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. But as I grow much older and I got much more mature, then I realized it's a slave industrial complex. Every system that you live in around the world is a slave industrial complex runs by two or three or four families. And slaves who would have become house slaves, so that means that you call them millionaires, like these big rappers and football players and all these things. They're designed in such a way that to teach us to keep in slavery and hoping that we can become millionaires just like them. Then they move from the sports industry to the movie industry. Try to create a different vision or a factor to keep us being enslaved. My daughter would have told me when you look at tell lie vision means tell a lie to your vision, television. And I was wondering, I said, but she's right. The things we sit down and look at the end of the day tells a lie to our vision. White is pure and black is negative and ugly, and they're only white pretty girls. Black girls are ugly. And they try to change the complexion of their skins, trying to bleach out themselves. There's no there's no simple comprehension to the hair that they grow on their head that prostrates instead of grows down. They fail to realize when your hair prostrates is that the root is strong and not weak. It covers the brain that entitles the glare of the pineal gland to waking us up of thoughts and purity and actions. The hair in our skins is the same thing, treats us. We fail to realize it's like an antenna that detects the different weathers in parts of the world that we're living in. We don't know that. By keeping the hair on our skin tells us, well, look, if there's supposed to be a storm tonight, suddenly your brain awakes and tells yourself, I sense that there's a storm tonight. Instead of that, we turn on the television because we have no hair on our skin, no hair on our head. We're going bald. So those antennas cannot work. By keeping the truth of history from us, our cerebral capacity stays less than 10% to those who have our aboriginal descent, or what we call melanin do not know. So, because we do not know our own history, we have to teach what has been taught to us from a system that is designed to enslave us continuously. Excuse me. And when we get up to talk about it, one say, "Oh, don't bother with him. He's getting crazy. He's mad." But it's to teach you the truth because you feel the truth is what you believe in. Not knowing what you believe in is to be stagnant, and not knowing the truth, which is ignorant. And if you become ignorant all the days of your life, you die an idiot. The thing is that I'm trying to find out who or what am I. So having a show, Gavin Matthews show, started with Gale Press and ends up on my own. And I keep running into brick walls all the time. No matter what I do, I stand out there, I'm arrested. And do you know that the hurtful part of the thing, I had this conversation the other day when I asked, who or what am I? I remember when I was kidnapped. And I was telling that friend and a group of friends in that conversation about a week ago, less than a week, I think it was a couple of days. I said the most devastating part of being kidnapped is not preparing yourself to be killed and you know by the time they clean, that's it. It's to know that that didn't happen. Then you have to revitalize yourself to come back into the world when your spirit, your body, your mind, and your soul and your brain would have prepared you for death. You have accepted it. The most hardest part after accepting death is to unaccept it. It becomes a nightmare constantly until to this day, as I'm speaking to you. I have dreams about it. Psychologically, yes, it affects because it was something that you have expected your body would have been gathered to be done to it. It accepted the energy of life being taken from it and to know it has to revitalize itself. I've become more hardened to the things of the world because now they cannot confuse me. Now they cannot trick me because death has no sting now on me. Who or what am I? The reason why I say that, and I was learning, still learning, after the 19th century would have given birth, means the end of the 18th century, depends upon how the explanation is. There was an information warfare. And in that information warfare, lots of information would have been leaked, been gathered by the Aboriginal people. There was this young fella that called Noble Juali, who would have founded the Moorish High Science Temple and the Moorish community, known as their prophet. And like any other Moor, they would have expected him to keep the information from going out, but he didn't. He worked on educating Aboriginal peoples of the land, the melanated people. Those like me, when I say melanated, I mean like me. My skin is heavily melanated. It's dark in complexion, that's what it means. And he had started to educate his people. Marcus Garvey was one of them. He was part of that round table. Elijah Muhammad was one of them, which now is known as the Nation of Islam, NOI, which Farrakhan is one of their senior ministers there. And then I started looking at why do they hate people like Farrakhan and and then I asked one guy a day and he said, he's anti-Semite. Then I went back and I looked up at the word and I said, what is to be anti-Semite? Then I see anti-Semite. Semite is me. It talks about a melanated people. Then I said, man, how can you be against your own self? Then it's a people who is educating. It's like me, melanated people. So who are the real Jews then? Because if the Jew is saying, the Jewish community is saying that he's anti-Semite, Semite, the word Semite talks about a people that are melanated, that is their life, they lived, and their people are known as Jews. So I'm like, okay. Then I started looking up on the Jewish community. Then I realized they were brought there after Hitler and his purge of Germany. The Caucasians that calls themselves Jews. So I said, wait, man. Every time I turn around and they talk about history, it's about the people that are like me. So I'm saying it sounds like it is my own history that they're giving me back. So I started to ask questions, and by having the Gavin Matthews show, I had the opportunity to be introduced to one of my Moorish brothers who sent some information to me that it set me on a train of no turning back. I have never ever received such information yet in my entire life. Out of all the books that I've read, and I've really find a conclusion to those books. Then I say, well, wow. I now see why they had the First and the Second World War because their intent was to create an information blackout. But then I am still forged by the hands of time to be not only valiant but a revolutionist. Then I was taught in order for a pen to be mightier than the sword, is knowledge, wisdom, understanding, peace, love, and tranquility. Then I said, man, I can't calm down. These people have done so much, not only to me, but to my people. How can I be calm? How can I be calm? My topic tonight wasn't this. It was based upon what I saw over the weekend. One guy walked into a store, shot 15 people, killed 10, and then live stream it whilst he was doing it. It really angered me. But I figured out it's because of the spirit that dwells within me, the spirit of peace, the spirit of humility. Guarded my mouth until now, not to speak such ill things against what you see happen. Because one of the persons that were killed in that event was somebody who I knew when I was living in New York, which is my family. It really angered me. It angered me to know that we're still living in a system of caste and cattle slavery and we cannot see it. It angered me that civilization and the birth of civilization belongs to us. It is cradled in an embodiment of the woman. The Aboriginal woman, the woman who's melanated, she is the cradle of civilization. So I now understand the reason why they want to get rid of her. Because if they snatch the child from in her womb, they can create who they want the child to become. Now I understood the reason why there's so heightened tension in our community among our own selves. They call it black on black crimes because we were brought up in such form and fashion that we were experimented upon. Now I understood why in the 1940s in the Bronx, that is why the name was given. People were put there to be lab rats. So those persons that they can study how a different type of disease can survive among people. So according to the Central Intelligence Agency, which is the CIA, all out warfare in the melanated community because they were infected with what you call syphilis, gonorrhea, and clap. So now in this day and age when you want to bring out a vaccine to talk against something that you call COVID-19, and for us to be vaccinated, how can I trust you when the same Food and Drug Administration brought out the same vaccine that brought out clap, syphilis, and gonorrhea? So now you understand why there is a complete rebelling against the Caucasian or the Caucasite system that is so designed to take away our rights and oppress us. As I studied the words and the etymology came to and I realized job is a Hebrew word for oppression. It's like taking you come to have a job, come to be oppressed. And as I said, good morning to you. It's a morning of my own soul. I'm talking about I'm in mourning for, which I figure out is I'm dead. Then I realized that talking these words or these speech creates an energy that comes right back to our souls. As the laws of nature teach us that so as you think and say in positivity, you attract that which is positive. So as you think and say in negativeness, you attract that which is negative. Now I understand you why you work so hard and at the week's end you gain nothing. It is because you continue to be entrapped and in slavery. And they create the words English language to more create the color of law so you can be enslaved some more. Yes. So now I sit here and I ask the questions. Why are we in this? Then the etymology of the words comes around again and tells me that we allowed it to happen. And I'm like, how can we allow to be enslaved? That's the law. The law is, I teach you this without knowing, but because of your failure to read, write, and comprehend, then you become my slave. I can remember a lot of nights sitting on this show and say the truth is hidden in plain sight. They put the truth there for you to read and see it and comprehend it, but because your lack of comprehension, because they never taught you how to comprehend these words. Because of your lack of the etymology of the words, because they never taught you how to do research of these words. And to those who they do the research, they call elders and they take their lives like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and all the rest of persons who would have lost their lives. They do this to these leaders because they want the world to know that they can awake and take their lives at any particular time. It's not that they can awake and take their lives at any particular time because they're teaching the truth. And by learning the truth for these past couple of months, and I realized to know to my East Indian brothers who I had a conversation today again, and he told me, he said he checked up the etymology of the words Indian. And then he realized it says indigo, and indeed indigo is the darker race. He said the black man, but you know. And I said, good, well, look at yourself. You're enslaved to the same society, but you're not in cattle slavery. You're what you call in bondage slavery or caste slavery. No matter how much millions you get, the system still owns you because they still direct your path. They can tell you what you can invest in and what you cannot. Then he asked me for an explanation. I said to him, look at one businessman who's in Guyana. He's participating in everything. He's sharing out millions of dollars, but he can't leave Guyana. He can't spend his money outside of Guyana. But he's a multi-billionaire. He's enslaved. So it doesn't matter if you have money or money not, you cannot still enjoy the lives that you think of. And when I started reading some more, I started getting the etymology of the words, and I realized I don't have to die to go to heaven. Heaven is right here. You know how I know that? The Bible tells me that. The Bible says, for the meek shall inherit the earth, and the wicked shall get his reward. From out of the heavens cometh the earth. When God said, let's go and create, and he talks about the firmament that settled upon the face of the earth. That's where the heavens were, and is all the time. Then I realized the word heaven means to look up. And I said, you can imagine that's the etymology of the word heaven. It's Greek. And to look down, you see the earth. Then I understand where the comment of heaven and health come from. Because they look at the eruptions of certain volcanic eruptions and they say, oh, out spews from the belly of the earth the fires of hell. Then I started searching some more 2 days ago. Then I realized what they were saying. They were peddling. They said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled that is convincing the world that he doesn't exist, but he doesn't exist. The truth hidden in plain sight, he doesn't exist. Then someone will say, but who is the devil? The devil is you. How can an 18-year-old child? That's the question is now asking. So they want to know if he's mentally ill. Walk into a store and shoot 15 people, killing 10, which includes one of my family, and say that he's insane. No, that's the devil's self. Then I asked myself the question, but why do everything that the Caucasian race does, it's always the opposite to good, which is bad? You check it, everything that they do. They were the first race that dropped atomic bomb in two countries, annihilating the entire place. Hiroshima. And the impact of that bomb, it killed 1.5 million people instantly. Over a period of time of 6 months, roughly 8 million people died, but that's according to record. It's more than that. How can a man do such a thing and still calls himself the human being? Then I realized when you identify yourself with these Caucasians or Caucasites, you are the devil. Then I sit down and realize, and I'm looking back and I said, but I check the religious history and it really comes around the same thing. How can King James lock up 87 men, the Council of Nicaea, in a room to create one Bible? When the church's existence depends upon the morality of the king, when King James was a practicing homosexual. Then I asked the question, why aren't there certain statutes or statues or when I mean a practicing homosexual, it doesn't mean homosexual. The word homo means man. Sexual means a man that is sexually active. But according to the English language, a practicing homosexual means uh, A man who's a lover of himself. Because I can't use the word gay. Gay means to be happy. Well, if you say faggot is a created word that came out of the slums, if you comprehend what I'm saying. So then I look back and I said, but the only thing that you can find any historic facticals or benefacts upon King James is the Bible, and the Bible was created in the benefit of him and only him. Because he said instead of the priests and the Protestants keep fighting among themselves to say whose word is more holier than who, he put all of them in together into a building. You call it the Council of Nicaea. And they created one Bible that is dedicated to him. Then I started looking at, okay, let me look at the word Jesus. And the word Jesus came to me, and I said, well, the pronunciation of it is Jesus, which is Latin and Spanish. Then I started looking at the oldest church that they talk about. It came out from Ethiopia, and then I realized that it was a different name, Bin Yahweh and Yahweh. That doesn't say that Christ didn't exist or there wasn't a Jesus the Christ, but the European version of it is completely false. Then they said he was hanged on a cross, the Roman crucifix. When you do get the story now, he was hanged from a tree, which he was lynched. And you find in the same way they start doing it to Aboriginal peoples that lived in the Americas, they started lynching them. In the same manner in which they killed Jesus the Christ. Then I started looking at every religious aspect on the face of this earth, and I realized it was created by man. And how did they get the understanding of how to create religion? It is for the spirituality of a people, which was their culture. They thought it was religion, but it wasn't religion. They were actually living the life they were designed to. So when I say Islam, they think, oh, I'm Muslim. I must be what you call those fanatics. But the word teach you to think like that. They are the ones who created those same religions. Now they're teaching you to hate. So then I realized the minute you accept the identification of black, Negro, African, is that you belong to a system. Black originated from the word Greek that talks about newbie, Nubian, newbie, the word black. That's where the word came from. Then we look at the word uh, Negro or Negroid. Came from the same thing, describing what is dark as Negroes, not dark as a croid. You say Negroid, Negro. Then I see where the word indigo came from because it's describing people whose darkest colors are coal. So when they call you East Indian, you're East Indigo, which you are a Negro or considered the black man. You just think or thought to be a lesser version of those who are called black. Then I now understand why they nearly named the entire world after some Indian because they didn't know how to specify us. So they put us in categories, now become the color of law. That's how we live. And we continue living and we fighting each other down. Like in Guyana, we talk about Kuli and Black. It doesn't exist. It is we who destroy ourselves based upon the teachings of the system that enslaves us constantly. And we don't know. Now we understand where the civilization of the world came from, out of the womb of the Aboriginal woman. She is now the sacred veil. Good night once again to you, mothers who I humbly adore and lift up in praise. I don't worship you, but I honor you. You are the cradle of civilization. They wouldn't want to teach you that. Now I see where the comprehension of making you an independent woman is concerned, because the more independent you be, is the more lost we become as a nation, because out of the woman who is the veil and the creation of humanity, I teach her to be independent, because doing so, she cannot teach her children to be interdependent. And to not to be interdependent, you cannot understand the value of family, the value of commerce, the value of unity, because you've been taught to stand alone. So you will teach your children that grows under you, because you are the cradle of society. And to answer to my friend who were asking the question, Mr. Nathan, if you say, do you believe in God? God is the word, God means government of a democratic system. Check it up, the etymology of the word. Then you'll understand what it means. The question you should ask him, do you believe in a supreme being? When we say God, we regurgitate what is being taught to us in the synagogues, who's part of a political system. Yes, in order for democracy to flourish and flow in which it is used today, it has to be taught in a religious organization. That is why, unto this day, the church controls all governments. Yes, the church in Rome. So, comprehending what I'm telling you is the truth, and the truth shall set you free, but free into where? Unto your own knowledge, unto your own self, which you now becomes responsible of. You can choose the choices that you want to make, but you cannot choose the consequences of your choices. Self law. I, self law, am master. You're a master to yourself. You're not master to anyone else. Your law stands as within your household, and that is it completely. But the world does not want to us to learn that. Now they apply our law into a court system. The law says anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. What is the law? You. You are the law. It's just the court. You're giving the judges permission to adjudicate over you from every time you answer a question that demotes you or defiles you. So, to answer your question, Mr. Felix, yes, the church is the state. The state is the government. The government is now domicile and de facto. I learned about the 12 zodiac signs, and when I read the Bible pertaining to Job, the entire Job, it talks about the zodiac signs, the seven wonders of the world, the seven seals, the seven trumpets, seven, which is a whole 365 degrees, makes the whole man. 7777. Multiply by 52. Four sevens multiplied by 52. Check it. 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 again. A woman's cycle lasts for 52 days, which makes up 1 month. But they would never want you to learn that. But it's written, it's there, it's in the Bible. It's just that you never read between the lines. I wasn't reading between the lines. I was reading based upon what they taught me in Bible school. In everything we must say and do, as I say to you people, we must eradicate the word black. Black is a word for enslavement. It's identifying you as a slave. Stop identifying your brother as a black man, or stop calling us black people, because we give identification to ourselves as in bondage. Say aboriginal or indigenous. Practice those two words. I like aboriginal. See, if you notice now, on these days I say aboriginal. The only black comes out of my mouth is when I'm promoting the brand. That is why I call it a brand, to let you know it's something that I can brand. When we say black, you brand yourself. So I'm taking the brand off of you and owning the brand and saying, look, it's going to go on cloth and objects. When I say black love is a stand against oppression, racism, murder, terror, and mayhem. That's what you must remember black as. I stand against these things. Don't identify yourself to it. You're not black. Yes, and to those who say, man, well, look, you got politicians. Yes, because you elected them. Every time you go to stand up in the line to take part in an election, you're electing the politicians to identify you and to work with you, which is to work against you. Because if you're a slave, and you keep saying you want freedom, but the politicians trying to tell you no, you cannot gain freedom because you elected us to control you who are slaves. If you read the system properly, if you comprehend what you're partaking of, then you will only understand. And if you understand it's to be standing under, you need to overstand where you stand over or comprehend. You need to find a word which you can hold for multiple times into your brain. The word etymology. And to tell you where the information is, it's hidden in plain sight. You can walk in any bookstore and find a book, a dictionary that says the origins of words, and it's going to break it up for you lovely. When you find the origin of word, then you realize the word democracy means to accept and to portray, and to keep on portraying and to give out oppression, to enslave those who wants to be enslaved. That's democracy. It talks about the will of the people. What is the will of the people? To remain in slavery. Why would the will of the people wants to remain in slavery? Because they accept themselves as black. They accept themselves as East Indians, which is black. So you got a people laughing at us saying what she told them, the black. And one saying he's East Indian, which means East Indigo, which means East black man. And one saying he's black. So you want the Constitution to reflect the will of the people, and the will of the people is accepting enslavement. Because when you read the Constitution, really, why should the executive and the opposition makes up the government in Guyana? Oh, does that make sense? Do you understand why Mr. Norton went and meet Mr. Airfanali? And people are crying, no, Norton shouldn't meet him. No, it's not that. It's democracy. So I mean, democracy, yes. The laws of Guyana tells you that in order for a government to function, it's the executive and the members of parliament that makes up the parliamentary opposition that forms the government of Guyana. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, yes. And then you ask the question, what is the government of Guyana? The government of Guyana is a corporate entity, and their subjects is which put them there. Who are the subjects? The people. Who are the people? Guyanese. So if an election is called and nobody votes, then there is no government. So the government is de facto. It's domicile. Because I am the people, I put them there to enslave me. So if I decide to come out of slavery, well, then there's no government. If 750,000 Guyanese decide to liberate themselves tomorrow morning, and tell the world, and not only the corporate entity of Guyana, but tell the world I'm now indigenous. It's my proclamation to proclaim my rights. They have no one to govern. So it is actually trying to tell you they govern based upon your will. What is your will? The will to keep on enslaving you more. That is the will. So when I take you to court, it's based upon your actions, not based upon the court action. The court ain't got nothing to do with it. It's telling the judge I give you authority to adjudicate over me. Yes, Mr. Nathan Fraser, there is a supreme being. There is. There is a supreme being. And there's much more for you to learn. But you could only comprehend or understand based, no, you could only comprehend or understand based upon what the system has taught you. You've grown up knowing that there's Sunday school, there's a God, there's a Christ named Jesus, and all these things. But if you study the etymology of words, if you study the time in which all this information was created, then you'll get to realize there's no such name as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Because in those days they were never spoken of. There wasn't no Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It was Greek. Greek was never English. Although it makes up part of English now. English language, it is the slave identification of a people. All those who agreed to work and talk English as their mother tongue language in their country are now cattled slaves. Check and see who fight against the US and all these English speaking countries are countries who refuse to have English being taught or refuse to have the administration being identified under an English colonial system. So we need to understand, Mr. Clark, as we talk again. Black people will never wake up. The word black is to keep them in slavery. My indigenous brothers, arise, not to wake. Wake is to keep awake. Remember, when you say I wake in the morning, is that you keeping awake for yourself. And I say morning is you mourning for the wake that you're keeping for yourself, which is present. So don't tell anybody good morning. Do not tell people to awake. Search these words. Arise, my brother, or happy rising, my sister. Address them as empress and brothers, or sisters and brothers, or kings. Start addressing yourselves to these things. You're a father, you're a head of the household. Remember that you're a sultan or a sheikh. Sorry, not a sultan, a sheikh. Remember that these things are added to you because it's you that it came from. It was the birth of you. We lived in pure law and harmony. There were no segregations. We lived open out as an uncolonized world. It is the Europeans and the English and all of these people who brought colonization to the entire world. So now I tell you, as I ask the question, who or what am I? Now I get to understand who and what am I and what the world is keeping me from. It is the explosion of information in these years, and they realize that wars and wars cannot erase the information or the explosion of information. That's what makes the pen mightier than the sword. So please educate your children and do not say educate because they are not animals. Cattle slavery is animals. So I want to say to you, I'm happy that I had the time with you and to tell you that yes, knowledge is power. And the only way that you can experience power that is knowledge is if you share it. If you don't share it, then you'll experience greed. And greed destroys the soul. So then, if greed destroys the soul, then you're no longer a living soul. You are a subnormal human or a subhuman. You call yourself human beings. It's the same thing. So I want to say thank you very much to those who are tuned in with me and was part of this conversation. It was healthy, it was nice, it was explosive. It's to let you know the reason why I switched, because when you look at politics, it makes no sense. It dictates, deteriorates, and enslaves you more. So I want to say thank you very much for tuning in. I want to say thank you very much for adding yourself to make sure that this information is out. Share this live stream. Even to when I'm finished, you keep on sharing it. Let people get to know exactly what and who they truly are. I want to say to you, stay safe, be careful, sanitize yourself, wear a mask, and don't forget the little ones you take into public places. This is Dr. Gavin Matthews-Bey. The number continues to be 592-611-6575. At the bottom of your screen, you can call to place your orders for the Black Love brand, or to call and to have that conversation on things that you cannot understand. This is Dr. Matthews Bay saying good night and Cheerios for now.